part of ultra running. As we seek the buckles, the finish lines, and the crazy distances, we experience a lot of failure along the way too. I'm Heidi.
And I'm Michelle, and we're both ultra runners and ultra running coaches who want to know more about the dreaded DNF, how, when, and why they happen, but more importantly, how we learn, we move forward, and we get back up to run again.
Everyone, welcome back to Let's Run That Again. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Heidi Baker.
And I'm Michelle.
And we are here to talk about the DNFs and the hard days in ultra running and how we can deal with them, learn from them, and grow from them. Please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you could leave a review and share, it's always so helpful and appreciated. We are excited to welcome Mary Namestnik to the podcast today. She is an ultra runner that I have kind of connected with on Instagram. We kind of had overlapping circles, and I've been following her ultra running journey for a while, and she's just kind of an all-around cool athlete. She's recently become a coach. She does, I believe, like cross-country coaching. I think you do girls cross-country coaching.
That's awesome.
And she's just kind of a cool athlete to follow because she really gives it her all and dives into like everything she's doing head first, and like she recently beat Q'd. She's just doing everything. So I wanted to have her on because I know she has a DNF experience to share and just kind of a cool story to tell. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Hi.
So, Mary, we always kind of like our guests to give a little background on how you got into running, how you kind of discovered the ultra running world, and just kind of tell us your running story.
So I kind of dabbled like in and out of running when I was in college. It was really brief. I was never on like a cross country team in high school or college or anything like that myself. But then whenever 2020 rolled around, I decided, not because of the pandemic, it was like before the pandemic, that, I had just had my second baby and I wanted to start getting in shape again. I felt best whenever I was running. So that was kind of the thing that I picked up. I decided to train for a half marathon. And then the pandemic hit while I was training, and I was like, well, there's nothing to do except for run. So I just kept on running, eventually ran my half marathon. And then my husband was like, he found out that I was listening to audiobooks instead of music whenever I was running. And he was like, oh, you should listen to the book Born to Run. It's by Christopher McDougall.
Yeah.
And obviously I got hooked. I feel like that's kind of the way it goes whenever you listen to that. It was specifically the story about Ann Trayson running Leadville. Where listening to that, I was just like, oh my gosh, like she's such a badass, and I want to do that. So I decided I would run the marathon to see if I could like finish it, and then dive into ultras, like kind of get my feet wet with a 50K. So I started training for my marathon, and I actually got pregnant. So I had to put everything on hold for 9 months. And then I think after I had that baby, I came back with like that baby. Sorry. After I had my baby, I came back with like a more of a fire for running. And it's funny that you say like I kind of dive into things head first, because that's what my husband says about me. I dove headfirst into running, started, eating, breathing, sleeping, running, ran my marathon 9 months after I had my third baby. And then 3 months later, I ran my first 50K, and then everything just took off from there.
So you have 3 little ones?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
That's a lot. But your husband is like, so, I mean, just from what I've seen on Instagram, and I've never met Mary personally, we've just become friends on Instagram and everything. But from what I've seen, her husband is like the ultimate like crew chief organizer, like taking care of the kids so she can get all her miles in. Like he's like so supportive of you and like your goals. And it's really
Yeah, he's
to
been so
follow when
great.
he like takes over your Instagram when you're racing and whatnot. It's
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, he keeps everyone
Love that.
updated.
yeah.
I
He's
love
kind of
that.
like a crewing nerd. He set up like this nutrition tracker for me actually during my ultras so that, he doesn't have to like sit there and um look at the nutrition label of everything. He just has all of my favorite snacks in like an Excel sheet and then he like puts everything by time. It's really involved, but he worked on it
Wow.
for probably a solid week and I was like, all right, I know it's for me, but you have to step away from your computer. Please come spend time with me. But yeah, he actually really enjoys it. I
That's
think he's going
awesome.
to get into running ultras pretty soon, but he really loves crewing.
That's
That's so
very cool.
cool.
I was gonna say he sounds like he's got some crew skills that like that's the type of stuff that other people who don't have access to a person like that would pay for. You know, like
Yeah.
there are now like
Yeah.
companies starting to do that
Like
kind
a
of stuff.
nutrition spreadsheet. I've paid for that before. Like that's
Yeah, yeah.
like yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I
he has like a lot of thoughts on DNFing too, so he might I mean, not like, have my husband on your show, but he might be someone to talk to because he likes to think that from a crewing standpoint, like you can really prevent runners from DNFing if you have
Yeah.
your crew doing the right stuff. So
Yeah.
we're trying to kind of like push that out to people and give people crewing information and stuff like that.
That's
That's
awesome.
fabulous, and I feel like that's something that we're just starting to see more of is like information for the crew, like
Yeah.
how to help your runner, you know, what might be helpful. I know there have been a couple of books that have come out, but I think that's great because it's such a fantastic skill set in itself. That's really cool.
Yeah, and not
I'm
just like
curious.
sorry, not just like the how to crew. It reminded me of when I did Kettle Moraine recently. We were trying to show my sister-in-law and her mom, like, because they've never been at an ultra marathon, how to crew me and my brother and how to help us. And the only videos like I saw on YouTube were like these intense, like Western states, like elite runners, like how to crew. And I'm like showing them this video, and they're like, "You have to be on top of it. You have to be ready when your runner comes in." They're like throwing food at them, and she was like, "I don't know if I can handle this." I'm like, "It's not gonna be like that. Like, let's calm down. There needs to be more for like." The average runner, like how
Yeah,
to
yeah,
crew just like normally and not like scary, intense, like elite athletes.
Right.
yeah. That's funny. Mary, I was curious when you heard that story about Ann Trayson and sort of understood that like her Leadville experience, sounds like something clicked for you. Something lit a spark and something kind of lit. Could you talk about just that fire or like what was it that got lit inside you? I'm just curious about that a little bit.
Um, I think I was honestly just inspired by the fact that she took on like this giant goal of not only running a 100 miler, but running Leadville 100, and then trying to beat the men. And I was like, that's a ladies' lady. And I just wanted to be like that. I wanted to be like her. I don't know. I just listening to her story and just like the details that were put into the book, it was just such a beautiful story how they were, like she was competitive, powerful, she was a woman, and I'm really drawn to this idea that women could be competitive and powerful. And I feel like I wasn't raised kind of like in a home that believed that necessarily. There was a lot of like, um, it wasn't necessarily that my parents were saying, oh, like, be a lady, that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
there was more of an emphasis placed on like beauty and like, oh, you look nice today and all this stuff. And then
Yeah.
I
Like
was a rugby
traditional
player.
gender stereotypes. Yeah.
Yes. So, and then I was a rugby player. So I finally, like, I
She's
already had that
badass.
taste. I already had that taste of getting down and dirty. And I was like, oh, well, this is kind of like something that I could do where I can't play rugby anymore because I got too many concussions on the field. But I could do this and it's just as gritty and powerful.
Yeah.
And there are not a lot of women doing it.
Yep.
So maybe I could be one to help other women see that it'll be something amazing that we can all do together.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
That's
Love it.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like when the pandemic hit, either people stopped doing any activity whatsoever or they jumped into ultras.
Yeah.
It swung in one of two totally different ways.
It was like I could do nothing or I could run all day long.
Yeah.
Those are the two extremes.
The other factor of it for me too, with my husband being in the army, he was actually in Bulgaria for that.
wow.
Like if March through, he got back on Father's Day of that year. So I was like going out on walks, going out on runs, like anything to get the kids out of the house. And I remember like it's actually kind of funny whenever I would like run by people, like back when people didn't really have an idea of how it's going and everything. I would be running and I would like hold my breath, running past people, just like just in case, because I didn't
Totally.
get it
Yeah.
home. But yeah, there was only so much that you could do. So we were like always outside, always doing something, always on our feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there was definitely a big surge in just people outside. Like all the bicycles in the bike shops, you couldn't get one for months because all of a
Yeah.
sudden, yeah, it was like, let's get outside and do something.
And then
Yeah.
Peloton had a big increase too during the
Oh
pandemic.
yeah,
Oh,
that's
interesting.
right. Yeah, I've
a lot
actually
of
read
running.
recently about this has nothing to do with DNFs or this podcast, but they had a huge dip in sales because they had such a surge over like 2020, 2021, even slightly into 2022, and then people had all these bikes that ended up just sitting and not being used, and so then they started reselling them. And so people didn't have to buy Pelotons anymore. They could buy them on Facebook Marketplace or whatnot. And so like Peloton was actually doing terrible for a while. And so they started actually now if you buy a Peloton off of somebody, you have to pay Peloton like a reactivation fee.
Get out.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's how they're
That's
like trying to
wild.
bring their money up. Anyway, that has not. My husband's really into like stocks and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, that's pretty
we
fascinating.
listen to those
Yeah.
podcasts. But yeah,
That's interesting. I'm guilty of that. I sold my Peloton.
hopefully you sold it before the person had to pay the reactivation fee or whatever.
I
it was.
did.
Okay,
I was one of those people that tanked their sales, I guess.
It's all right. They need to figure out something. That's on them.
No doubt.
So let's talk a little bit about like your race that you specifically wanted to talk about today, your DNF. I know it was a 50-mile race, but it wasn't the first time you'd run 50 miles technically, right?
It was supposed to be. The first time I actually ran 50 miles was at a backyard ultra, a couple months before that. And
Can you gotta share that? Like I'm looking at your ultra sign up has some of the greatest race names, including what
the bullshit backyard ultra.
love it.
Yeah, that's honestly, it's probably my favorite race just because of like the people there and everything. I plan to go back every year, but yeah, I went in and I was like, whenever you approach a new distance, you're always like, I don't know if I can do it. So I was like, I want to go and hopefully, I run at least a marathon. I like to do like all these different goals. Like I want to run at least a marathon. Let me take a step back. I want to run at least one loop, 1 yard is what I said. Like, because you never know,
Yeah.
like you never know. I was like, I could twist my ankle. I wanted to run at least 1 yard. I wanted to run a marathon. I wanted to run a 50K. And then I wanted to run a 50 miler. So after I hit maybe like 10 miles, I turned to my husband and I was like, I think I could do like 100K here. And I ended up running 100 kilometers at this backyard ultra. So after I left that, I was kind of like, well, I feel like I could do the Bloodroot ultra now, but there was sort of a different factor with that where it had a very high DNF rate, and it still has a very high DNF rate, just because of, it's got 220 feet per mile of elevation gain. And it has a reputation for being pretty technical and muddy oftentimes because it's in the spring, it's in the mountains and all that. So I kind of held my breath when I signed up for it, the December prior, but one of my friends talked me into it. She was like, "Yeah, you can do it. Don't worry about it." And I was like, "Yeah, I can do it. I'm not gonna worry about it." So I like signed
Yeah.
up for it. And I didn't do it. Like I ran some of it, but
And the Bloodroot Ultra is in Vermont, right? So it's like
it is.
early spring in Vermont, Northeast Trail. Yeah, like those are known to be really rooty and technical. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely
So
more than I could chew.
so the bullshit backyard where you did your 100K, that was in March 2023,
Yes.
right? And then a couple months later was the Bloodroot Ultra. So you were pretty pumped, like you knew you could do the distance,
Hmm.
and it was just a whole different course, a whole different experience because it was a distance, not just the backyard format.
Right. Yeah. And I was thinking because it's so different, the backyard format is very low intensity in the right conditions. I say that because
Hmm.
at the bullshit backyard this past year, the conditions were tremendously different than the year before. It was like
Interesting.
flooding a little bit. It was very muddy. We were slipping and sliding everywhere. So it was actually really high intensity all day, but most of the time it's low intensity. And I knew for the Bloodroot with the time cutoff, I believe it was 14 hours for the 50 miles with all of that elevation. It was going to be tight. Um,
Yeah.
so if all things were perfect, I could do it, but I actually ended up getting an injury probably like a month before the race that I continued to race on because this was at a time where I really liked doing road races still,
Hmm.
and was fairly new to running. So I wasn't training smart.
So by that, do you mean you were running a lot and running fast on roads?
Yes. So when I sign up for like a 5K or something, it's, I can't casually run a race. It's just like, it's not in my blood. Like I don't know. It's not that I don't enjoy it, but like if I sign up for a race, I'm like, it's go time. Like we got to put the gas on. Like we got
And
to go.
first, we're going in.
Yeah, like I don't know. There's just something about being on the start line where I'll say, I don't know if I'm going to race it or not. But then as soon as I'm there, I'm like, I'm definitely racing. Like I can't not race. So, I had all these races that I signed up for. My foot was hurting kind of on the bottom of it. We still didn't know if it was like plantar fasciitis. That's what it sounded like. Or if it was something to do with the metatarsals. We couldn't really put our finger on it. And I didn't want to go to a doctor because, I didn't want him to tell me that I couldn't run
Don't
my
run.
50 miler.
Yeah.
Yep.
So avoid, run on it fast and make it worse. I wasn't really even able to walk 2 weeks before my 50 miler. So yeah.
So what happened when you got up?
I decided that I just wanted to start. I was like, if I run 1 mile, at least I can say that I tried.
Yeah.
And we put like all of the stuff. We threw all of the stuff like KT tape. We did inserts. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember everything we did. The plantar fasciitis socks, the ones that are
Yeah.
kind of tight
Yeah.
around.
Compression. Yeah.
Yeah, we tried pretty much everything. Um, and I didn't train with any of that stuff, obviously, because it happened like a couple weeks before. But we were like, we'll do what we can. It's better to try it and to get a little bit of ways than to not try it and only do like half a mile or something. So I started to run on it and it felt pretty okay. But I'm gonna say I only got 43 miles in. Which honestly isn't bad, but once I realized I couldn't hit the
Significant.
time cutoff and my feet were suffering because of the inserts, like my shoes just didn't fit right. I was like, I gotta call it because I don't want to do any more damage. And it's kind of funny because after the fact, my foot stopped hurting. Like it was 2 days after and I had no more pain in my foot. I was like, this didn't happen 2 days before, but
You ran it out. You fixed it.
yeah, that's what I think. I was like, I think I just kind of like beat it out of my foot.
Yeah. Your
Whatever
foot was
it
like, you know
it's
what?
like,
No, I'm not going to bother. She's just going to keep running.
yeah, basically.
I can totally relate to being a little bit injured at the start of a race, and it's like you don't want to not try because what if it works out right there and then? You got to see how far you get. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 43 out of 50 miles on a really tough course is really solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, I didn't expect to get that far. I was like, maybe I'll finish like 50 kilometers in 10 hours. Like maybe it'll be something like that. But being able to go, do it's a 50K loop and then two 10-mile loops. That's what makes up the 50 miler there. So being able to even start the 10-mile loop and then to finish one of the loops, I was like literally over the moon about it. I didn't know, I didn't think I could do it. I didn't even dream of doing it. But I'd say overall, it was, even though it was a DNF, it was like a really successful day for me because I got to find out how powerful I actually was and how much control my mind had over how well I did during the day.
Do you feel like because you went in with the mindset of, I just want to try and see how far I can go, that kind of helped your mentality, like accepting a DNF?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my coach kind of prepped me for it too. Like a couple weeks before, he was like, even if you decide not to run it, you had like a really great training block. You did everything you could.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know I didn't actually do everything I could. I was racing on like a broken foot. Not a broken foot, but one that's not working properly.
Right.
And I was like, well, yeah, I still got to try. And whenever, it came time to cut off my wristband for the day, I was extremely satisfied with what I was able to
That's
accomplish.
awesome.
That is awesome. That's really great. Yeah. And it sounds like you had so much reason to be. I think also, like going in with that mindset, it sounds like you were very open. You didn't have like a predetermined, I have to, like you were just open and kind of curious about how far you could get. And that's one thing that comes up again and again is how powerful and effective that sense of curiosity is. Just like let's just see what happens when running ultras or setting out to do anything hard.
Right.
Yeah. And I think another factor for me too that day was my kids come to pretty much all of my ultras. There's two that they haven't been to. But I remember thinking like, they get to see me start something, even though I'm nervous to start it. They're going to see me try something and I'm likely going to fail, and I'll be able to fail with grace, and I'll be able to set this standard that like trying is the most important thing that you can do whenever things get
Yeah.
hard. And as somebody who, not to like talk myself up, but I feel like I run pretty fast. I've
You do.
placed like in the top 3
Yeah.
like quite a few times, and the kids have seen me get medals and stuff like that. So to be able to go to a race and say like, I didn't finish it, but I'm still extremely happy, I think they need to see that. So
Yeah.
I was like, it's thumbs up for me as a runner and for me
Oh
as a
my
mom. So it was a
gosh,
win-win
yeah.
everywhere.
Huge thumbs up. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
How
really, really awesome.
how has this like DNF shaped like you going forward, like signing up for races and like your mentality like going into races? Like has it helped you be less fearful of like just getting out there and trying, or like how has it kind of shaped you as an ultra runner?
So I'm not afraid pretty much of any race at this point. Just because I think if you have the right mindset going in, whatever you come back with, you're going to be happy with. Whether it's just starting, it doesn't matter. As long as you're in the right mindset, you're going to feel good afterwards, barring any serious complications, like
Right.
getting hurt or, unexpected like aches and pains, stuff like that. But yeah, I actually had a conversation with my coach recently about how I want to try to do things that are even more difficult. And as much as I love reaching goals, the times that I felt most fulfilled were in the backyard ultras that I've run, where there was no finish line. And I haven't won one of them yet, but I've come in, I think, 4th and 2nd at them.
And
That was
first
more fulfilling.
female.
Yeah, that was more
Both
fulfilling to
times.
me.
Yeah.
Thank
You were
you.
first female both times at the Backyard Ultra.
Yeah, but I felt more fulfilled doing that than when I won my 100 miler in May. And I felt even more fulfilled whenever I DNF'd Bloodroot than I felt whenever I won the 100-miler. It's just, I think it's something about like actually hitting the limit for me, that makes me feel good whenever I come away from a race. So we've decided that we're actually going to try to put some really difficult things in my path. And I think that that wouldn't be the goal if I didn't have that experience at Bloodroot.
So cool.
I am so excited to see where that leads because I think that mindset and that attitude is like that's the formula for success. With you, like your sense of you got that competitive edge, and like
Hmm.
I hope that folks who are only listening can feel the fire, like because I hope it comes across in the audio as much as it does in our video. Like you've got a spark. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm very competitive. I like to work very hard. And, you know, I always thought that I really liked to win, but it's definitely come down to I like to push myself as hard as I possibly can, even if it results in not winning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's no longer the goal for me necessarily. I want to see how far I can take my body. I want to see what it can do.
Which is
And you're in the midst of like, you know, you've been doing these ultras, and didn't you just run a road marathon to try to get a BQ?
I did, yeah.
And
My
how
body
did that
did
turn
not
out?
like that. I did get the BQ.
Awesome.
So I didn't really enjoy, you know, I had to have pancakes for breakfast that morning. And I'm kind of a person who, before an ultra, I'll like swing by Mickey D's and I'll get like an Egg McMuffin and something,
Right.
you know, but having to like really think about my carbs and like really calculate everything for the race, I didn't really find that enjoyable. Once we started running and I could just kind of like pound the pavement, I was like, all right, this is awesome. I got my BQ. I ended up running in 3 hours, 27 minutes. So I'm
Wow.
not sure if I'll make the cutoff for Boston.
So
I don't
did you
even,
submit today?
I didn't
You didn't?
actually.
Oh, really?
I just kind of wanted to get the BQ.
That's
Um,
so interesting, Mary. Oh my God.
yeah, I
That's
know.
so
also, and yeah,
that's
and
so cool.
I
I
was
just
like,
love
yeah,
that.
I'm good.
Yeah, like I think it goes back to the whole thing about, you know, getting the qualifying time is the hard part. So I did the
Yeah.
hard part.
Yep.
I don't really need
You
the,
don't need to go and wait till like 11 a.m. to start a race or however long you have
right.
to wait
Yeah. And
because
the
of
cost of it is so expensive. I
it
think
is
if it
true.
was cheaper,
Extraordinary. Yeah,
Yeah.
you could
super
easily
nice.
travel for 100-miler for what you could do going to Boston. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, I did the hard part. I'm good now. But yeah, my body um after running that fast for that long, it was just like, why did you do that? Like my shins were
Hmm.
screaming at me. I never really have shin pain. My ankles were all upset. And I was like, all right, okay, we'll like stick to ultras. I won't do it again. I got what I wanted, shifting gears.
It's pushing yourself in such a different way. Like
Yeah.
you push
Yeah.
hard in everything you do, but it's like that's a totally different like pushing yourself. I feel like when people, you know, they find out you run ultras and like run like 50 milers or 100 milers, they're like, oh, I did one marathon and like I can't even imagine running that far. I'm like, okay, well let's calm down for a second. It's not like that though. Like it's not like pushing
Yeah.
yourself for 26 miles. Like yes, it's
Yeah.
hard, don't get me wrong, it's extremely hard, but it's a very different hard.
It is. There's a picture of me at my 100-miler that I really like, which is me just like bent over with my hands on my knees, my headlamp, everything around me is dark, and I'm just like breathing. I'm just like trying to catch my breath. If I were to do that during a road marathon, like I'd never finish. You know, like people would like zoom by me and I would never get my BQ, but it's definitely, it's difficult in a different way. Like I remember it was like mile 80 at my 100-miler. I was like, I kind of want to be done. I want to like take a nap. But it was mile 20 at the marathon where I was like, all right, where's the finish? Like, when are we going to be done? Because
Yeah.
it's the intensity is just so different.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
really is.
Well, I applaud you
So,
for taking that on during
oh
like
my gosh, yeah.
when you've been used to ultras. That's tough.
Yeah.
It's definitely shifting to a different gear.
It was.
So
Yeah, it was.
your first 100 miler was just in May of 2024 at the Highly 100-mile race in Richfield, Ohio. And I don't know if folks caught that, but Mary won the race,
Yes.
like outright, like overall first place, not just first female. So you beat the boys, you beat everybody, which is really, really cool.
Awesome.
I was curious because you said something earlier about how like every time you do a new distance for the first time, it's I don't know if you use the word scary, but it is a little bit daunting the first time you do a new distance. So I'm wondering, like, with the experiences that you had previously had, do you remember like standing on the start line at the Highly 100 and kind of what was going on for you and what was going through your mind at that point?
So this was a little different because my first 100 miler was actually supposed to be in January. And what happened there was a week before, not even a week before, it was like 5 days before I was supposed to run. It was supposed to be the Shippy Endurance runs in Missouri. Um, I went and I got blood work done just because, I don't know, maybe when you're an adult woman, you get blood work done to check things out. I don't know. It was like one of the first times I decided to do that. I was like, let's check things. And then my ferritin came back at a 2. So
Scary.
I sent the information to my coach and like we had been thinking I was tired, just because I was, a mom.
And ultra
My
training.
Yeah.
race times weren't bad or anything. I was able to like train through it. So we were thinking it was mom exhaustion, but when we got those numbers, we were kind of like, all right, we have to like take a step back, breathe, think about it. He talked to like the people that he knew, over at CTS, and I remember telling him like, I'm gonna run, I'm gonna start, and we'll just see what happens. But then we had our pre-race phone call, and he was like, you can probably finish it, but we don't know what your recovery is going to look like whenever you don't have any like ferritin in your system. I mean, you could do well, you might not finish, but if you do finish and you push yourself hard, because we know that I can, like that's one thing that I'm good at. I can push myself through pretty much anything. But
The better or worse. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Was it going to be for better or worse? And we think the outcome would have been very bad. So that was kind of the first time that I decided I needed to take a big step back.
Hmm.
So we worked through it. I ended up getting a couple iron infusions. And then whenever the race in May rolled around, it was kind of like I've worked so hard for it. And I knew that I was ready for a 100 miler even in January. So I was like excited to finally go out and get it. That was the one time that I was not afraid of a new distance because I was like, it felt like it had been such a long time coming that I was like, I was crying on the course as I was running it. I was like, I'm
Oh.
finally doing it. So,
So you had been held back already once and
yeah,
were raring to go.
yeah.
Yeah, I can
I
definitely
was
understand that.
I was very ready. It was definitely not like I had been training at that point for a 100 miler 7, 8 months, but really like it had been in the plan since I had my third baby. Like everything was leading up to it. So I had been mentally preparing for it for so long, physically preparing for it for so long, and then I had to take another break and I was just like ready to go by the time it rolled around.
Had to do, if I remember correctly, didn't you like have to like strategy wise kind of change things up a little bit too? Didn't you have to like you couldn't do caffeine or something? You'd like tried like napping.
Yes. So it was during the backyard ultra in 2023, I had to pull out because I felt my heart wasn't doing well. It hurt. There was like pain. And then, I ran, maybe it was just the one or two more ultras. My heart didn't hurt at all. And then at the backyard ultra this past year, I had taken caffeine and I got that same sensation in my heart.
Hmm.
So I talked to a cardiologist and he was like, there's not a ton of research about this. And caffeine is like a really good tool for people who can handle it. But it
Yeah.
just happens to be like, I'm one of the people who can't handle it. And that's something that we learned, um, through trial and error. So whenever the 100 miler rolled around, instead of using caffeine. And it came all the way down to like I wasn't taking Excedrin. I get migraines and I couldn't have Excedrin. We just went with ibuprofen. When I got tired at night, I would just have to sleep for like 3 to 5 minutes at a time.
During the race.
Yes.
Still won outright.
It was only like 3 times, so it was like very short.
But still,
Very short.
yeah, I mean, that can be a significant, I mean, if you're napping 3 times for 3 to 5 minutes, I mean, that's 15 minutes, not counting the like other downtime of like, refueling and all the things. So,
Mm-hmm. And I do think part of that too goes back to, Bloodroot setting the stage for what are we going to try to get me through all of this, because there's so much that you can plan for, but so much that you can't plan for. So we're like, what's it going to be like whenever I hit 18 hours and I'm suddenly exhausted and I can't take any caffeine? I guess we'll just try napping and see what happens.
do you feel like it was effective?
It was, yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I was actually surprised. So for some of them, I didn't actually fall asleep, but I would lay there with my eyes shut, and then my husband would be like, "Hey, it's time to go." And I would get up and I would be far less dizzy and delirious, and I'd be able to they were 2.9 something mile loops. So I'd be able to get 1 or 2 loops in after that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
So are you going to use the same strategy like going forward to like your next 100?
So the next 100 is 20-mile loops.
Okay.
It'll be different.
Yeah.
I'm honestly not sure how we're going to tackle it right now. I'm hoping that I'll be able to run it straight through. One of the reasons I got so tired during the Hylia is because, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It could be Hylia, it could be Hylia. I took a Benadryl at the beginning of the day because I had, I have bad allergies to cottonwood, and that's like the cottonwood time of year.
Oh, wow.
Gosh.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I'll be able to avoid the Benadryl in October and just run straight through.
Okay.
Is there an alternative allergy like med, like one of the like Zyrtec or Allegra or any of that? Dude, if I took a Benadryl, I would be on the floor in no time.
I was kind of like closing my eyes, like I think it was 4 or 5 loops in, so that's like 15 miles in. I was like, oh, I'm so
It would definitely make you sleepy.
Wow.
So what my doctor told me whenever I first started, like I'm not super familiar with allergies and everything. I just kind of like take pills whenever it seems like I need them. He was like, oh yeah, it takes a few days for it to like activate in your system and everything. So I was like, well, Claritin is not going to do anything, so I have to like use the Benadryl whenever I need something quick acting.
Gotcha.
And I don't know if that's right or not, but that's what I was told. So I think maybe for my October 100-miler, I'll probably start like a week in advance taking Claritin, just in case.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I am not a medical doctor, but I think that sounds like an effective strategy to avoid the Benadryl.
Yeah, I don't know if my coach is going to listen to this. I haven't told him that yet, but hopefully it's a good idea too.
It's along the lines though of what we've talked about on here before. It's like you just learn something new each time, and then like you just stack the bricks, like find that one thing that you can add in next time, and then your next race you'll probably discover something else that you'll have to change or add up next time, and that's kind of it's just an ever progressing, sport really. And I don't think there's like a finish line in the sense that like, it's like, okay, I'm good now, I'm done, because there's always something more, whether it's like trying to get better at a distance or trying a more difficult course or, trying a longer distance or something like a backyard ultra. There's always just kind of something new.
Yeah. And that constant problem solving, like Mary, it sounds like my guess is pretty good at problem solving. Like when things come up, it's like, okay, what do we want to do here? What can we implement? What's a strategy to try to handle this? And my guess is that you're doing that throughout the race.
Yeah, and it's not just me. It's definitely a team effort with I usually have a group chat with me and my husband, who's always the crew chief. Well, not always. My sister was crew chief once. So she also deserves credit. Um, Me, my husband or my sister or both, and then my coach. And whenever a problem comes up, I either send it to the group chat or my husband sends it to the group chat, and my coach has been really great about like being there during races and being able to say, oh, well, if you're puking, maybe you need to slow down for a minute. And then we can pick up the intensity when you feel better, like that kind of stuff. So,
This might sound funny, but it actually never occurred to me to set up a group chat ahead of time to be like a resource during the race. Like
yeah.
I usually just like don't deal with my phone. I try, but like that is actually a really good strategy
Or like
to
just
Yeah.
have that.
having like your crew chief have access to like the coach and be like, here's
Yeah,
where she's at, and say, do you have anything you want me to tell her, any advice? Because it's like
right.
the
Yeah.
athlete's not going to be on their phone, and coaches can't always be
Yeah,
present, like physically present at the race. So
Right.
it's like that's kind of just something I would have never even thought of, but that's really smart.
Yeah. And it's
yeah,
nice for me as an athlete too, because I can go through it after the fact and like, I'm not on my phone as much. If it's something like, I'm throwing up and I need help, I can kind of slow down and like text and be like, what do I do? I'm on course. But most of the time it's my husband texting my coach, and then I'll get to read all of it after the fact. And I learn a lot about
Yeah,
what to do whenever I'm out on course in those situations, just going through the messages that they had back and forth.
that is very cool.
that's really
Hmm.
cool. Any coaches that are listening to this, be open to opening starting a group chat
Yeah.
with your
Yeah.
athletes, like crew chief at least, because that's a very smart way to kind of stay on top of what's happening at the race for sure.
Mhm.
Especially to have that record of it afterwards.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Um, Mary, I'm wondering, like, we all have a point during a race, sometimes many, many points, because it can be quite a roller coaster, especially in a longer distance. When things get really hard and you do, maybe it's a belly issue, you puke, whatever happens, and things get really tough. Um, Talk a little bit about how you handle, like, when you're in the pain cave or in the really tough spot, whatever, however you call it. But
So for me, the pain cave, it kind of shows up really late. At my 100 miler, it didn't show up until about mile 80, which like I'm extremely thankful for because whenever it did show up, it was really, really hard to get through. And I credit like my pacers with kind of helping me through that. But I'm also a very like I keep to myself when I run. I don't talk a lot to like I know there are people who speak to like other runners during races and stuff like that. They'll talk to their crew. I'm just very like focused and I run. So a lot of what happens is in my head. And I find that the pain cave for me is less of a physical sensation and more of a mentally, I'm just bombarded by like negative thought after negative thought after negative thought. And it's stuff like um, during the backyard ultra this past year in 2024, whenever it was super muddy, it was super hard to get through, really high intensity. I remember my brain was telling me, like, your legs are already hurting and you're only 30 miles in. Like, my goal this past year was to win it, to win like all of it. And it was just, you're not cut out for this. Maybe you're weaker than you thought. Maybe you're getting soft. And I've just found that the best way that I can deal with that is to say no and just like shut it off because I'm not like an overtly positive person when I'm racing. I'm just silent. So I try to stop everything in its tracks. Like that's the best I can do. And I try to tell my cross country girls too, because they'll say things to me like every once in a while. They're like, oh, my legs are burning and all this stuff. And I'm like, don't speak that into the air. Keep it inside, keep it under control. Just do away with the thought, stop it in its tracks. Um, so I feel like my way of coping with the pain cave, whether it be physical or mental, is to just not think about it. Like I know Courtney DeWalter, she says, sit in it and make it deeper and everything. But like I have to disengage.
Yeah. Well, everyone's like, that's like part of our goal here too, is like everyone has a different strategy. Like some people can't sit in it. And I think that's, I think that's important to talk about it, like the different
In
strategies.
a way, though, I don't see those as two totally different things. Like I think the approach, the way that I understand, and like it was like Courtney doesn't call me anymore, so I don't know. No, like I do not know her at all. With but
Text her real quick, find out, clarify.
But the way I understand it is when she says like sit in it, it's more like you're not you're not fighting, and maybe it is a little different, but it's kind of like you're not fighting it. You're not going to make it totally stop.
But I see what you're saying,
But
Michelle, because it could be her way of describing it is just a different visualization than like what
yeah,
Mary is saying. Like while Mary's saying like shut it down and say no, like Courtney's like chip away at it, and maybe that's her way of like saying,
and I think
like,
yeah, I think also maybe Courtney, like talking about that pain cave in that way, in her way, might be more the physical pain.
yeah.
Like the physical body sensation, the flaming quads, the burning, everything hurts. We can't make that go away. But yeah, I guess maybe it is a little bit apples and oranges because it more those negative thoughts. Like I wish that more people would talk about the negative thoughts because the voice inside our head, like that is it can be tremendously dominating sometimes.
It's loud.
In a hard effort, tremendously loud.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love, and I heard such decisive power. And Mary, when you were describing it and you said, I just have to tell those voices, no. I could imagine like when a dog is coming at you really, really barking and like being really nasty, and you know how sometimes you can use that really like strong voice and just say no. It's kind of like saying that to the negative voice in your head, and that's how I'm envisioning it. And I'm like, wow, like that I could employ this. Like this is really useful. And I'm picturing like, if folks can't see the video, but like picturing like the hand up, like stop right there. No. And for me, sometimes I'll think of it like I will say to that voice that's telling me like, yeah, you're not going to make it. You're taking too long. I like to say like, okay, you need to just sit the F down and be quiet because we got this. Like, we got this. And keep it moving.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe they are different things from talking about Courtney's pain cave to this, but I think there's a lot of power in what you're saying and what you're describing because you're not succumbing to it. You're telling that negative voice, I am in control. I got this.
Yeah.
And let's keep going.
And that's too, like, I know that that's not what my internal monologue is. 99.9% of the time when I'm not running ultras, I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, I'm super weak. Like, I like to think at this point in my life, I'm a very powerful woman and I'm capable of doing a lot of things. So when this, honestly just rude voice like comes into my brain when I'm trying to focus, I'm like, dude, no, we can't be thinking that. So yeah, it's definitely like whenever you mentioned like, it's a dog barking and you have to tell it no, that's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really love I have a visual for that. And there's a sense of such strength in that. That is really tremendous.
Thank you.
I feel like, Mary, you just like carry that in your life though. Like just from what I've seen of you, like you kind of you have an ability to like speak up for yourself and have a lot of like, not in a bad way at all when I say this, but a lot of pride in yourself, and you I mean, you're just yourself. And I mean that in like the most genuine way. Like you have no qualms like showing the world who you are.
Yeah. And
And I think that
I
carries
do,
over really well into like ultra running.
it does. And I do want to give like a little shout out to my husband because I was not like this before I met him. And not saying that it's all him. Like I know that a lot of it is me, but he definitely gave me like the confidence and he was like, you can do a lot more than you're doing right now. And I guess it comes back to the fact that he's my crew chief, you know, where he's
Yeah.
like,
If he
you're
gave you the
capable.
space to like to do that, because that's like I feel like the opposite of a lot of women would, you know, find themselves in a situation where they feel like they have like less voice or power, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in relationships sometimes. Not everybody, but you know, it's not something that everybody always feels like they have that space and that voice. So like that you felt that immediately
Yeah.
upon a
And
relationship
Yeah.
with him is really powerful.
yeah. And I feel like too, I couldn't have grown as an ultra runner. I wouldn't even be an ultra runner without him telling me to listen to that book, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, but it goes hand in hand. You know, he gave me the space to grow. He's giving me the space to like figure out who I am as a runner and do all of this great stuff. And he's supporting me along the way. Um, yeah, he's kind of been um, not like a backseat driver, but you know what I mean. Like he's been pushing me along the way, and it's really helped me discover that I am capable of like all of these really big things.
That's really incredible. And it says so much about you to have found a partner like that. Like that sounds like a true partner, like someone who lifts you up and sees more in you than you realize is even there. You know, like that's wonderful.
And then it's also him driving me to Bloodroot when my foot was, you know, not in gear. And he was like, well, I guess, yeah, we'll go and we'll see if you can do a mile there. I'm like, thanks, buddy. You know?
It's funny.
It's great.
So,
Um,
are you planning to go back to Bloodroot again?
Um, yeah, it's actually so the timing of this meeting is perfect because I signed up for it yesterday.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, yay.
Yeah. So I'll be going back.
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going back this spring, and I was gonna go and I was gonna run with a couple of my friends that I've met through running. But I ended up telling them yesterday, like just knowing myself, we've talked about it a little bit on here. When I get there, I'm gonna want to run very hard. So I had to tell them, you know, like I don't think I'm gonna be able to run with you. I would love to still go with you, but
Yeah.
I think for this race, like I need to tackle this, and I
Yeah.
need like I need to attack it as hard as I can. Not necessarily as a redemption thing, but almost as kind of like, yes, I want to finish it, but I love what that race has given me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
it's ultra running, as much as we talk about the community and all of that, it's also very, very personal. And
mhm,
truly, no matter what, you run your own race. And we're all there for a very personal reason, usually.
mhm,
So I think that's great, just to kind of to go and have that fun together, but then to also know like, okay, well, let's go, but we're gonna do our own thing.
yeah.
Um,
And they understood immediately too. They were like really good about it. They were like, okay,
yeah.
like they're gonna run together, and then I'm just gonna go do my weird Mary thing that I have to do.
So for you, when you were talking back to the dealing with the negative voice in our heads, because I think that is something that I recommend that everyone get really deliberate with, because the it happens for all of us, all day, all the time, in everything we do. Like we all have this voice in our heads that sometimes is louder than others. But I wondered if you've ever found, or if you've ever tried, when you tell that voice no, or when you're sort of talking to yourself, if you use your name, like, have you guys ever tried this? Like, if, like, I will literally talk out loud to myself and say, like, Michelle, you got this. You've done this how many times before? I know you feel like shit, but this is what you're going to do. You're going to put, like, literally self-talk using your own name. sometimes that creates a little bit of buffer space in between like you and the icky voices
Yeah.
and can be really, really effective. So
Um,
I always tell everybody, talk to
yeah,
you like you're talking to somebody else.
yeah, I've tried that during training. But I'll say during a race, everything gets shut off. Like I'm literally just running, and the most I can do is like, say no and stop the voices in their tracks. Like that's pretty much all I can focus on doing, aside from actually moving my feet. That's it's kind of like and I know it's like this for a lot of people. I have OCD, so I constantly have thoughts in my head. And when I'm running,
Yep.
that's the one time that they go silent. But like they go silent, silent. Like my husband will try to talk to me and I'll just be like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. Just tell me what to do. Like, do your crew thing. Just tell me what to do.
You get in a zone.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
definitely. I'm
all.
like,
That's awesome.
absolutely dialed in, and very hard to pull me out of that. So
Oh,
it's kind of a double-edged sword whenever it
yeah.
comes to, the whole self-talk thing. Like I'm very focused, but almost to a fault.
I mean, that can be extremely useful in a big effort.
Hmm.
I'm just like I'm sitting here like, oh, I'm getting really
That's
excited to
probably
see what
why
Mary does next.
that's probably why you like don't even think of your pain cave as like a physical thing, because your brain is literally just like focused on the task at
Yeah,
hand and not like what your body's feeling. Like,
right.
I
You
mean,
tune
yeah,
it out.
maybe, but
Hmm.
you just sound like you tune that out really well. Like,
Yeah. A lot of what goes through my mind, I'll have like one like phrase from one song on repeat for like literally an entire ultra. Or I'll just be like listening to my foot hitting the ground for like the entire
it's
time.
very
And that's
David Goggins-esque. But like, but that's what he talks about. I mean, no matter what you think of him or whatever, like that's what he describes though. Like in his like books, like he like will just shut off his brain. Like his feet hitting the ground is like all he hears or thinks about. And that's like
It's just like locking in.
that's
You're
how
like
he can
locked
like
and
just
loaded, ready to roll.
go. That's how, I mean, like I said, no matter what you think of him or whatnot, like he's successful in what he does in like these races and stuff because of that ability to just
Click
turn it
in.
off.
yes. And it's not that I don't like David Goggins,
No,
but
I know.
I use him as an example sometimes of like, maybe this is a time where we do put on the brakes. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
he is,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I love David Goggins, but I agree. Like that's
yeah.
yeah, but that's exactly what he's like described, and that's something I've always envied when I've listened to those books, because I do not have that ability to just listen to my feet hit the pavement and nothing else. So
Yeah.
like that's a cool thing to have.
Yeah.
Mary, when you're so hyper focused and locked and you're doing your thing and you're cruising, like how do you rely on your crew chief for like nutrition? Like I could see it being real easy to kind of not
Get to
pay as much
fuel or like
attention, like forget to eat. Like I
yeah.
could see it be real easy to forget to eat when you're really just zoned in or
Yeah.
out.
So I'm fortunate in when I get zoned in, the nutrition so far has been included. So
That's
Good.
good.
yeah,
Awesome.
I'm usually very on top of it unless I'm feeling like if I don't get my numbers exactly right, I'm feeling sick.
Okay.
So when I start to feel sick, that's when I kind of like start to lag behind and my husband has to be like, "Hey, you got to like eat a little bit more."
He pulls out the spreadsheet.
Yeah, he's like, "Hey, you're behind." Like he had this whole dry erase board whenever we did the backyard ultra this year. And he was like, look at this, like you're not doing what you need to do. And I'm like, okay, well, like I'm trying. Can you get out here and run like this? Like, come on. This is hard. There's mud everywhere. I can't focus. So, but yeah, he definitely like he helps a lot whenever I get into those slumps. Like as
Hmm.
soon as something goes wrong with the nutrition, he basically has to take over.
It's an incredible combination of being able to really, really lock in and focus on running. And that visual of like that, I'm going to always think of it like Mary, like hand up, stop the voices. No.
Yeah.
Just no.
But at the same time, you're able to problem solve when things go wonky and things come up. So you've got this unique, really excellent sort of constellation of different traits that I think will be tremendous for getting out there and keep pushing your limits and seeing what happens.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is good training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously we're always going on these long runs, and one of the things my coach really hammers home is practice your nutrition. Get your nutrition numbers down on the long run so they become second nature whenever you're in a race.
And
it
like
really
muscle
does.
memory almost.
Yeah, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and if it's been too long, when I'm supposed to be doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good point. And I think, that when you get really good and sort of in a routine with nutrition, my body knows the time without looking at my watch. And I'm like, oh, it's been X minutes. Yes, I need to eat something.
Yeah. And it's crazy how quick too, like if I go over my numbers, I'm usually around the 200 to 250 calories per hour range. If I start to inch up towards 300 calories, my body is like, no, I'm doing that.
You've got like your sweet spot figured out. That's great.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
That's so cool, Mary. Well, we are excited to follow along. Michelle, did you have something else to say?
I was just going to say, when next up, is it Minds of Spain?
It is,
Minds of Spain 100.
Oh, yeah, you did that 100K last year, right?
I did, yeah.
So you're doing the 100 miler now?
The 100 miler, yeah.
Nice.
They have a really cool, like, okay, I'm gonna breathe it into the air, but I'm gonna try to win it because they give like a wrestling belt
That's
to
so
the
cool.
overall male and overall female. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it. The winner from last year, she's very fast, very competitive, very focused and tuned in as well.
She's running it again.
So yeah, I think if we're both having good days, it's going to be like a really fun race to watch.
Cool.
That's going to be great. That's super exciting.
Follow that one along for sure.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to your husband's updates. Is he crewing you?
Where can folks find you, like to follow along?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much everything is on my Instagram. Mary Runs Ultras.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. And Minds of Spain is October 18th. Oh, it's a Friday race. I love a Friday start.
Yeah.
Michelle and I will be able to follow along because it's the week before our races.
Yes.
And I can follow along with yours too because I'll be in recovery.
Yay. That's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome, Mary. Thank you so much for coming on. And we'll be following along for sure to see how Minds of Spain goes and also to watch you rock Bloodroot again.
Yeah.
That'll be awesome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on. I love talking about my DNF. So
yeah, that's
it's
so
nice
great.
whenever people are
we
like,
love talking about them too.
Yeah. I think they're great. I think, it's a rite of passage and it needs to be talked about more, and how powerful a DNF could be. It doesn't have to necessarily be this big scary thing. It's a big step for all of us. So
it's like a Band-Aid.
So much
you just gotta rip the first one off and then it's not so scary after that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been really awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
This has been so cool. And if you guys want to follow Mary, she's at Mary Runs Ultras, and follow along with her journey. And her husband's always really good about like updating things on her Instagram when does like an Instagram takeover when she's running a race. So it's kind of fun to follow along and see what she's doing. So that wraps up today's show. Thank you, Mary, again for coming on. Remember us and give us a share, a review, and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And we will catch you guys next week. And in the meantime, remember to stay curious and embrace the challenges. We appreciate your support so much. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tag us on our Instagram at Let's Run That Again and give us a shout out when you listen. And as always, we welcome feedback from you and are open to ideas and guests for future episodes. Reach out on our Instagram or email us at letsrunthatagainpod@gmail.com.